just you and I.
All right, so we talked about the cloud security process, and now we're really going to talk about the security responsibilities by service model. Now, we've kind of gone into this in our discussion of past service models, but now we're going to take it a layer deeper to understand at a granular level each of the security concerns and how they differ between the service models. In this lesson, we're going to discuss the security considerations for each service model, and then very importantly, the division of responsibility between the customer and the provider. All right, so in this diagram, you see all our service models, infrastructure as a service, platform as a service, software as a service, and then also it's contrasted with on-premise. The blue refers to what is in with the responsibility of the customer. The gray is what's in the responsibility of the cloud provider. And it's also important to see that some of these security responsibilities are shared between the two. Now, what's common that's always the customer's responsibility is data classification and accountability. We're going to go into this more in future lessons, but data classification is really identifying what is the value of the data, does it require, and what protections does it require? Where is it? How do you ensure that you've effectively labeled data or the environments to ensure that data of a certain sensitivity level is protected? And this is always the customer's responsibility across all of the various models. Client and endpoint protection. This is also largely the responsibility of the customer, except a little bit of shared responsibility when it comes to software as a service. Client and endpoint protection refers to ensuring that all of the devices that are going to connect wirelessly to your cloud environment are appropriately monitored for security threats and vulnerabilities, have antivirus software, etc., and ensure that they are able to connect in a secure manner. Our next responsibility is identity and access management. And you'll see that this one is shared between the customer and the provider in platform as a service and software as a service, because we're starting to shift, as the models shift, the provider is taking over more responsibility for management of that underlying infrastructure. In identity and access management is ensuring that you know that basically everybody who's accessing this cloud environment, know who they are, you know the rights that they're supposed to have, and that this individual has to truly authenticate who they are before granting access to the cloud environment. And in addition to setting up technical controls that enforce identity and access management, there have to be good governance and policies on the inside of the environment to ensure that logical access is reviewed for appropriateness, that there's segregation of duties, that people can't necessarily create checks and write checks to themselves is a classic example. And then also that over time, people's responsibility don't grow beyond what their job really needs to enforce what they refer to as least privilege. And then the next level is application level control. So this is application security. So this one is most important for infrastructure as a service. And then it's also shared in platform as a service where, we talked about many software environments are being developed. And this is ensuring that there's a secure software development lifecycle, that vulnerabilities in application are constantly being tested, patched, and monitored. Then network controls. This is really only a small segment that's in the responsibility of the customer, but this is where it's important for the provider has effective controls to monitor performance and security threats on their network, proper segmentation to ensure that customers' data doesn't get commingled, or that customers are able to escalate privilege and get access to other customers' data. A lot of these controls are enforced at the network layer. The host security, this is really ensuring that there's proper security over individual servers and hardware that's running on the host infrastructure. And as you can see, this is, for the most part of the cloud provider's responsibility. So the cloud provider really has to do effective due diligence to show customers that they are being a good steward when it comes to host security. And then physical security. This one is very squarely in the cloud provider's responsibility. And this is one of the advantages of shifting and using a cloud provider is that you don't have to worry about the utilities. And they always use the phrase guards, guns, and gates to keep people out of the data center. But still a very important piece of maintaining. There is no security without physical security. So this is a huge responsibility in the cloud provider's perspective. So we've now gone through all of the different service models and all these different categories of responsibility. And we're going to go in more depth throughout this course. But at a high level, these are all the security considerations and how they exist on this gradient of shared responsibility between the cloud customer and the cloud provider. All right. Quiz question. Which cloud service model comes with the greatest security responsibility for the customer? Is it software as a service, platform as a service, or infrastructure as a service? If you said infrastructure as a service, you're correct. Now, our diagram also had on-premise, in which the customer is responsible for everything. That kind of gets at many of the advantages from a cost perspective of shifting to the cloud, but introduces new risk in terms of shared responsibility. But in regards to this question, infrastructure as a service definitely has the greatest security responsibilities because the customer is more responsible for all of those different facets of securing the cloud environment when compared to the provider. Okay, in this lesson, we talked about how security considerations differ around the cloud service models, and then also talked about how there's shared responsibility for some aspects of cloud security, and then also areas where there's a need for coordination, where there's direct shared responsibility, where there isn't a clear dividing line between the provider and the customer when it comes to securing the environment. And then we also talked about many of the controls and considerations with each of these security responsibilities. All right, well, we covered a lot in this lesson, but I'll see you in the next one.